Rich Orlando. I grew up in Ashtabula, just over the border from Erie. And my first exposure to Gannon was when I was in high school. I came up to the basketball camps here at Gannon and was recruited by Gannon. We had some personal family things, so I didn't end up coming for the first 2 years. I was at Kent State for a couple of years. And then the third year came to Erie and thought originally, well, I'm going to play basketball. I was in pre-med. And when I got here, the pre-med program as well as the chemistry program were so, I won't say daunting, but so demanding, put basketball aside and decided, I'm going to focus on academics. And so my experience with Gannon as a grad was that the foundation I got here on Gannon campus, both in the biology and the chemistry area, and as well as other areas, allowed me to get through medical school in 3 years. So I was able to get done the first 2 years really in about 15 months, just because such a strong basis here that I was able to really test out of all these classes like physiology and embryology and microbiology, because of the people here that gave me such a good foundation in the sciences. I go back to when I was on this campus, I had a really a mentor, a guy who really pushed me, and that was Father Joe Gregoric, and he was here for over 40 years. And Father Joe was a PhD in anatomy, and he taught at the Medical College of Virginia. So when I got to campus, I had a lot of classes with him, physiology and embryology and histology and anatomy. And he would really work as hard in the classroom. But those of us that were going into medicine, he would take the time and we would have sort of our own little study group, but also a get together and let's talk. Let's talk about what your future holds. Because really, you don't really know what to expect going into medicine. And he would talk to us about the importance of understanding that that person in front of us was truly a gift from God, that we were here to take care of. So he would talk to us in sort of the Catholic tradition standpoint, but it made me think, every one of those people, I would look at them like I would my grandmother, and how I would talk to her or treat her. And everything we do isn't always, sometimes we make misdiagnosis, or sometimes the surgery doesn't turn out what we hope it will. But if we keep that patient's best interests at everything we do, that's all we can expect of ourselves. And so I worked with a lot of residents at Ohio State in ophthalmology, because I was an ophthalmologist, and I would try to pass those sort of same feelings along to them, that our behavior is recognized by those people we treat as well as their families. And it was everything we said, how we said it, our own body language. And so when we walked into the room, you may have had a bad day, and the patient before you might have really just been a difficult one to deal with, but you got to put on another face for that next person, because that's the first time they have heard what you have to say. Mm-hmm. And so I think ethics and a moral foundation in what we do in healthcare is so important. And I wanted to pass that on to the next generation. And we have a wonderful healthcare program here, not just in Erie, but in Ruskin. And those students need to be aware of how do we handle situations, because medicine is not black and white. It's always shades of gray. And you always have to question what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. And so when I retired 4 years ago, before I retired, I wanted to give back so that that legacy and teachings that I was doing with my own residents and medical students would go on here at Gannon, both in Ruskin and here. So we have the lecture in both places every year. And there's so many things in medicine that demand a critical thought. And I want our students to start thinking in that manner. And the lectures we've had in the past on mental health, dementia, tonight on public health. Our very first lecture here in Erie was during COVID, and it was delivered by someone who was involved in the making of the vaccines, and it was about what do we do for the greater good of our community. A lot of people were not for vaccines. They thought, well, I don't want to be told to have a vaccine. But really, what about your grandmother who might be exposed if you got it? What about her? Should you get that vaccine? Maybe not for you, but maybe for your grandmother, or maybe for your neighbor. And so we didn't lecture them in the sense that you have to do this, because that's not what Gannon's about. But we wanted them to think about what their actions were. And I think it was a very thought-provoking lecture, that first one. And that set the tone for what we want to do every time we have these lectures on a campus, to allow us, not just as healthcare providers, but the general community, even those that aren't going to be in healthcare. What are the things we need to think about? Because we've all been touched by things like dementia. And what do we do about those caregivers? They're struggling. How do we help them? Is there some way we as a community give back to them to help them with what they're dealing with? Maybe give them a little relief. Maybe we want to go and work with the Alzheimer's Foundation. So that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted Gannon to be thought of a place, if there is an ethical issue, again, like a pandemic or other issues that aren't, again, black and white, that they'll look to Gannon and maybe come to us and get one of our former lecturers or one of our faculty members to talk on the issue in the way that we live every day on this campus, that is supportive of our mission and lives our mission every day.